Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I am recording this talk just for anyone that wants to say anything. If you have something to say afterwards and we're in the discussion period, I can shut the recording off. But I just want you to all know that I am recording. I've had a number of people ask me to. Everybody here knows who I am. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm a Toronto-based designer, maker, and educator. And this talk was really hard for me to work on. I didn't realize how old I was until I started diving in. I started selling work publicly in galleries in 1976. So painting with Barry Clark, who was a local landscaper in Northern Ontario, a landscape artist. So early on in my career, I would go and paint in his studio a couple of days a week, and that continued till 1985 when I moved to Toronto. And he had a relationship with 2 galleries, and he always included my work, a curated selection, in his exhibitions. So I was selling work from an early age. When I went to high school, was not a great experience, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But in 1982, I went to Sault College of Applied Arts, and I focused on advertising and ceramics. So thinking I was going to be an ad agent, I was going to do really well. I worked for a year and hated it. I liked the work, but I hated the politics. So I ended up coming to OCAD in 1985 to focus strictly on ceramics. When I finished, I didn't actually finish, and again, that'll come up in another story. I started at Harbourfront Centre as a resident, and I spent 3 years there. Best time of my life, or one of the best times of my life. After that, I started working at OCAD. From there, I came back to school to get my undergrad. I came back to school again to get my master's. So I've been in school forever. Throughout all this, I was also doing all kinds of workshops and classes with various different artists and makers. So this is a really early piece. Again, working with Barry Clark, I started in grade 7. Being a gay man and growing up in Northern Ontario, it was not an easy place to be. And he kind of took me under his wing, along with a couple of other people, young kids, and we would go and spend time in his studio and we would paint with him, and he would teach us different painting techniques and things like that. So this is a really early piece, just a leaf study. We would go out in nature and we would paint with watercolors, and we would also paint in his studio. These are pieces from when I was a student at Sault College. The first one is logo design, and the second one, visualizing type, and these were for the advertising program. So this was, again, really early on in my formal education. At the same time, I was doing ceramics, and this piece in particular has very strong meaning and connection for me. This was a request by my grandmother to make a big bean pot for 2, because everything was too big and she wanted something that was intimate and small and was perfect for her and my grandfather. So she used this for 20 years, or close to 20 years. And if it wasn't being used, it was sitting on the coffee table with peanuts or different nuts in it, so it was always on display. And then when she passed, my name was on tape underneath, and it came back to me. So I've had it, and it sits in my living room with peanuts in it all the time. While I was here at OCAD, I worked on a lot of different things, and I tried different techniques. So this is my introduction to raku. And for those of you that don't know the history of OCAD, where the Great Hall is now, that used to be an open courtyard. And we would do raku firings in the courtyard. So it was an outdoor space. The school is built on an H with 2 open courtyards, and we would go and we would just explore and experiment and play. So raku was something that I really loved. And these are quite large pieces. And they're pieces that I have still. A lot of that work doesn't exist anymore, or it's been sold and gone, but I happen to have a few of them. Again, raku, this was slipware. So I was learning molding techniques and how to create objects that weren't just thrown or slab built. So molding became a really important part of my practice moving forward. So I made some kind of commercial production work. So this is a 4-piece mold, cast earthenware, raw, not glazed, and they're shelf brackets. So I made a whole series of these kinds of things for industrial design applications. So I was really happy to learn a little bit about mold making. And some of this is learned on my own, some of it was learned in class. At the same time, I was trying to focus on improving my throwing skills. So I did a lot of kitchenware, I did stacking bowls, I did teapots, I did all kinds of different service implements and things like that. And I tried to try different forms and different shapes, different glazes, coming up with different sizes, different scales, different shapes. And I was trying to control the clay as much as I could. So in that time, I did everything from teapots and stacking bowls, commercial bowls, all kinds of stuff, including quite large vessels. Like these are 29 centimeters, they're pretty big. So that was all in my early years, 85 to 88. And then in 89, I started my final year. So this is some of the work. I was combining slab work with throwing work, distorting work, paddling work, hammering work, doing all kinds of different textures. And at that time, I was dealing with my sexuality, with coming out to people that didn't really want to accept that I was coming out. And I had a really messy relationship that ended poorly. And I felt beaten and bruised by that relationship and by the way that I was being treated, right? So I did a whole body of work that was basically me going through therapy. So I would build these hollow form constructions, and again, they're quite tall. They're like 45 centimeters tall. And I would build them, I'd have the perfect scene, and then I would beat the crap out of them, right? And it was just a way of kind of getting rid of the anger and the feeling and the emotion in a constructive way for me, right? It was just kind of mental, physical therapy. So I did a whole series of these pieces impaled. I had some that had steel rods running through them. I had some that had gunshots and bullets and round things kind of pushing through. I did about 10 or 12 pieces in total. I only have 2 left, which are the 2 that you see here. And this was my final work at OCADU. During my final crit, the professor at the time had invited all of these strangers to come and see my critique and expected me to talk about this really personal, painful experience in front of these strangers without ever telling me. I didn't know. I walked into the room, there were all these people, and it was like, okay, talk about this horrific experience. Talk about how, how bad your life has been the past year. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And so we had an argument, and I didn't handle it well. And I said something to him that ends with off, and I walked out of the room. So they kicked me out of school in my very last year. So one of the best things that ever happened to me, to be honest. But then I came back and worked through it. But at that time, like many of you, many of the students, I couldn't get the classes I wanted or needed. So in my last year, 1989, I thought, I need a credit, I'll take jewelry. It's a studio class, it'll be easy. And I love it, right? My life has been jewelry ever since, right? So it's one of those things that, but at the time, I was using things I had around me, and I was using a lot of different materials. So human hair, chicken bones, these are all things that I really kind of enjoyed, this kind of idea of fossil, found things that have no value or meaning, yet by sticking a diamond in it or a cubic zirconia in it, all of a sudden people see the glitz and the glamour and, oh, it's worth something, right? So I was trying to play with those kinds of ideas. It was also the first time I refused anything. So that beautiful granular texture that you get is something that had changed my life and my practice forever. It's what I'm known for. People call me the fuse meister. Everything I do has some form of fusing in it for the most part, and it's something that I enjoy immensely and have since 1989. I just pushed it further and further and further. So having had this experience at school, getting kicked out, I decided, I don't need them. I'm going to open a gallery. So I opened the Bregna Gallery with a partner, and we opened in June 1989, after me getting kind of kicked out of school the last month of school. And we were building up towards this, thinking that I'm a maker, I can make a living, this isn't going to be a problem, I'm just going to work and sell my work, and it's going to be great. I knew nothing about anything. My partner was 15 years older than I was, and was basically looking for something to fill her time. And shortly after we signed a 3 or 5 year lease, I can't remember how long it was, she had moved on to something else. And so she had money, she came from money, so she was fine. I did not come from money. Even to the point where the space that we occupied was in an industrial complex. It was not in a place where people go to spend money. It was non-mills in an industrial park. And when we took over the space, when we decided or tried to turn it into a gallery, they told us that we needed a public washroom because we had 2 or 3 feet of square footage too much to not have a public washroom if we were opening it as a gallery. So we paid to install a bathroom, which was so stupid thinking back, because we could have put a false wall in the back for like a couple $100, and it would have solved the problem. Instead, we had a plumber and a contractor and a room built and plumbing brought in and everything else, which was hugely expensive, to the point where I ended up having to give up my apartment and lived in the studio and the car garage that was attached on the other side. So I lived there for 6 months, 5 months, and they would move the cars out at the end of the day so I could use the hoses that they washed the car with so I could have a shower. But I was an artist. You're supposed to suffer for your art, right? That's not the way it should be, but that was the mentality, and that's what I did. During all of this, it was quite frustrating, but I had this opportunity to go to Harbourfront Centre, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I worked with Melanie Egan. She was in the studio at the same time that I was. For 1 year, we had a 1 year overlap. And Harbourfront allowed me to start teaching. So I started teaching in 1990. I was teaching, this is going to shock you, I was teaching 8-week courses, including materials, for $150 per student, right? You can't even go for dinner for $150 anymore, right? But that's what I was making when I was doing that. And I wasn't making that. That's what the students were paying, but I was still buying all the silver for the band ring. I was still paying for all of the materials they were using, all the saw blades, all of that stuff was coming out of my pocket. But it was an amazing experience. It totally changed my life again, because it showed me how interested I was in passing on the knowledge that I had gained to other people. So this went on for a while, and while I was at Harbourfront, I started participating in the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, or Art Exhibition, which is what it was called then. Over the years, I did 18 almost consecutive years of the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, and almost all of my contacts, all of my galleries, all of my high-end clients came from that show. I was selling in more than a dozen galleries across the US and across Canada. All of them came from the outdoor show. In 1991, and I put this in here just because it kind of shows that you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. I was terrified the first time I did the outdoor show. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to make any money. I was investing all of this time and energy and trying to make work that would sell and work that I wanted to make, not just work that would sell. And so I was conflicted all the time. And in the first year, this is the second year I did it, but the first year when I did the show, I was so busy making the work they didn't think about display. So what you're looking at up there is the back of my dresser drawers pulled out and spray painted black. And the first year I did the show, I didn't have legs. I lived in Kensington Market, so I had carpet rolls from the fashion district screwed to the sides of the dresser drawers. And it rains at the outdoor show every year. So by the end of the show that year, my cases were about 1.5 inches shorter than when I started because the bottoms were unraveling. But it was a great experience. It showed me what worked and what didn't. I listened to the comments that people made. I had tons of people and friends from Harbourfront that were doing it, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of test my work in the market. And after that, I won honorable mention in '91. I also won Best Jeweler 1992, '93, and 2008, which came with a cash prize. It comes with recognition and everything else. So it gives you a little boost to your career, right? Boost to your self-esteem, knowing that you're on the right path. My experience with Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, or Outdoor Art Exhibition, was so pivotal and impactful in my life that in 2017, I joined the board and stopped doing the show. So I've been the chair of the Toronto Outdoor Art Exhibition board since 2022. We gave away over $47,000 in award money last year. And I'm happy to say that craft has been very well represented the past few years, winning Best of Show and the Donors Award. So it's really nice to see the recognition coming back to craft as well. And next year is our 65th anniversary, so the award money is going to be up to $65,000. So students are eligible for those. You also have the opportunity in your last year at OCAD to be part of the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair Career Launch through the Centre for Emerging Artists and Designers, which gives you a free booth, right, if you win. Right? There's a bit of a competition. It's a juried exhibition, but if you get in, you're set, right? So I want all of you that are here to think about that. So I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit. But this is some of the work that I was doing while I was at Harbourfront. Again, I was really interested in fusing. I had done that first couple of pieces at school, and I was trying to push how controlled I could make the pattern. And at the same time, I was really interested in material. So these are rubber O-rings that I'm incorporating into the work. And I had the lovely Allison model my work for me. Allison is a faculty here in printmaking. And we actually worked in a restaurant together back then, so I asked her to model for me, so she was gracious enough to do it. I just had to give her dinner. So the patterning was something that really interested me, and again, material. So I was trying to come up with ways of incorporating the different surfaces I could create with fusing with other materials. So I did a whole series of porcupine pieces. And the nice thing about the porcupine pieces is they don't show well on the slide, but when you wear them, your body actually interacts with the work, so the porcupine quills kind of stick out a little bit. So there has a little bit more volume, a little bit more excitement happening. So I started off with those, and then I happened to be going to Harbourfront and noticed a run-over toothbrush that had been run over by the streetcar. And the bristles were all totally screwed up and flattened off. And so I incorporated that into the work, so I didn't have to use the porcupine quills anymore. I was using something else to create that volume that I had more control over the way that it sits. And I used a lot of opal because I've always been fascinated by water, which has been part of the theme of my work forever and continues to be. And this piece in particular, it's in a private collection, a very prominent private collection. But the thing that I found really interesting about it is, at the outdoor show, I had this woman that would come from Bethesda, Maryland. And Instagram, nothing existed when I was making this stuff. So we would communicate via email, and she would send me an email or sometimes a letter, and she would say, oh, I'm going to this gala, and a friend of mine saw your brooch and wants one, so I wanted to commission you to make one for her. But just make sure that the opal is smaller than mine, right? So I would send off a couple of drawings, and then she would pick the one that she wanted, and I would make it, and I would just mail it down to her. So it was a really great kind of relationship. And this is part of the talk that I want to say. Like, all of these opportunities, everything that's happened to me in my life is an opportunity. It's a partnership with somebody else. I've never done everything on my own. It's always been because I've been in the right place at the right time, or had the right connections, or something happened and serendipitously, things came together to allow me to do what I wanted. So this is just another series. I did multiple different colors. I did high polish, I did matte, I did all kinds of things. I also played with the bristles and tried to come up with larger forms, and again, alternate parts of the body or ways of wearing. So the earrings, that large loop and the little bristles that go up the side fit up inside the crease in your ear up here, rather than just on the earlobe. And I did these in different materials as well. I used heat set acrylic and different riveting components and things like that as well. And at the same time, I was really trying to push how controlled I could be with the patterning. The fish motif still continues to be my #1 seller of all of the patterns that I make. And it started off from a trip to Venezuela. First time I was ever out of the country. And when I got there, we were at the beach, and there was this skeletal fish that the crabs had eaten clean. And all I did for like 4 hours was take pictures of this dead fish on the beach and draw it, and all the tourists thought I was completely nuts, because I'm spending all this time not looking at the scenery and enjoying the atmosphere, but taking time to look at this dead fish. But it went on to become a major part of my practice, right? Not only was it connected to water, but it was also connected to that fossil idea, the history, the slope, the build, the layering, right? So there was a lot of things in it that inspired me to do a lot of other things. I also created the ivy pattern while I was at Harbourfront. And this is a piece for Rites of Spring, and it's an altar, so it's supposed to be a ceremonial aspect to bring on spring. So there are certain things that happen in the spring when you're looking at ritualistic pagan rites. And so I just wanted to do something that showed more volume, that was bigger, that had a bit more form and more shape. And these will show up again later in my practice. So when I finished at Harbourfront, I started, along with Karen Franzen, Beyond the Front. And this was a really pivotal time in my life. We were leaving Harbourfront, we were having to set up our own spaces, we didn't quite know how we were going to manage it, how we were going to pay for things in the city of Toronto. And by opening up a collective, it opened up access to grants that we weren't eligible for before that. So we had all received Craft Ontario grants, and I received a setup grant from the Ontario Craft Council and things like that, but I wasn't eligible for certain pools of money because they were only eligible for collectives. So by putting this together, and all of us came from Harbourfront, but Karen and I had the lease on the studio, which was in the old Wrigley's gum factory. And because we had this collective, it opened up all kinds of exhibition opportunities, all kinds of granting opportunities, and ways of getting financial support that we weren't eligible for on our own. The studio closed in 1997, and the only reason it closed was because they sold the building as industrial condos. So you couldn't live there, you could only work there, but they sold them off as units. And they were in the midst of changing the zoning to make it a live-work space, but in 1997, it still wasn't a live-work. And none of us could afford to buy it and still live and pay rent somewhere else. So we ended up dismantling the studio. And this was a case where when we started Beyond the Front, because of my experience with the Bregman Mitchell Gallery and the total screw up having to pay for rent for 5 years without actually having access to the space. We ended up subletting that space because we couldn't afford to live there or work there. So we sublet it for half of what we were paying, but we were still paying for it all this time because we had no way out. So when we started to be on the front, we had dissolution agreements. So if you decided that you wanted to leave, how was that going to work? How long did you have to give notice? How did that work? Who owned equipment? How did that work? What partnerships, whatever, names, all of that. We had all these legal contracts drawn up so that there was no question of how things were going to proceed as we went forward. And we're still friends today. It worked out very smooth because everybody knew up front what the rules were and how it was going to work. So that idea of having those difficult conversations at the beginning is worth it because it saves you so much hassle in the end. While we were there, we created really strong relationships with people all over the city. And we created the East of the Dawn and the Fall West Studio Tour. And there were usually about 12 or 16 people involved. And we would collectively get together and create these exhibition opportunities, either in gallery spaces or in people's studios. And it was really, really early on when that studio tour thing didn't really happen. So this was kind of breaking news in a way. And because it wasn't at a time when we had the internet and we could send out emails to everybody or send out blurbs to everybody or send out things on Instagram, we did flyers and mailers. So we literally printed invitations to the show. We did the photography, we laid them all up. We literally licked stamps and envelopes. And then finally somebody said, just use a sponge, so you're not licking it, right? But we sent out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these messages and these flyers. And it got to the point where, because we were paying for the stamps and we were paying for the distribution, we had an arrangement, and you could do this back then through Canada Post, where they would give us the bags and we would pre-sort everything by postal code, bag everything, and drop it off at the mail depot. And then all they had to do was throw it on the truck and deliver it. And by doing that, it was like a third of the cost of a stamp for the actual sending it all out. But this is a time when dinosaurs roamed the earth still. So that was kind of, we did that for many, many years. I don't know how long, probably 10 years we ran these studios. Even after the studio East of the Dawn, our studio, Beyond the Front closed, we still ran these kind of opportunities for people to show their work and make sales. This is some of my early work as well. In the 90s and the 80s, I was intimately aware of the impact of the AIDS epidemic on family, friends, my community, the restaurant community, the arts community, and I was losing friends and colleagues left, right, and center. So one of the things that I was doing back then was trying to act in a bit of an activist way by saying, okay, nobody talked about sex, nobody talked about safe sex. Homosexuality and sex was still kind of in the closet. It was still something that was a dirty little secret. So I started making these condom cases that you would wear proudly out in the open, right? And back then, the gay community would actually put a condom in their back pocket and then take sandpaper and they would sand off the fabric to leave the ring in their pocket. And it was an identifier to the gay community that you were gay and you practiced safe sex. So I took it a step further and created these condom cases. So they're symbolizing the gay community, they're full of triangles. The piece itself is the veil symbol with the triangle on the top. It's a rolled up condom in the center, so it's got a bit of a divot. And then you opened it up and there was a condom inside. At the time, condoms were sold in a round case, not in the square package that we see today. So it just worked out really, really well. And the strap that's on the top, or the chain, is actually a leather strip. to tie into the fetish community, the gay community, to make it an even more of a stronger connection. And this piece was purchased by Joan Chalmers, and it's in her private collection. So, and lots of references to the gay community. And I continued making these for a number of years. And this piece, Out in the Open, won the award for excellence in Taking Tea with Eros, a show about sex, by the Metal Arts Guild at the biannual 1994 juried exhibition. And it traveled to Alberta, Quebec, Ontario, and it spent a year traveling around that exhibition. So it was really amazing to have these pieces out there. The domes were created, just a side note for the jewelers. When I moved into my studio in the Wrigley's building, I didn't have a lot of equipment. So I didn't have a nice dapping block, I didn't have a bouging bowl, but I did have in the back stairwell of the building these beautiful round metal knobs on the stair rails going down. So at night I would go into the back stairwell with my hammer and I would create the domes and use those like a bouging, like a mushroom steak. And that's how I created the forms for these. The piece on the right, piece on the right is a piece called Ready When You Are. And again, it's a condom case that when you try to take the belt off, a condom falls on the floor, right? Because it's a locket, right? So it was just one of those things that kind of pushed that idea even further about safe sex. At the same time, I was doing fetish wear for the gay community. So I did all kinds of chainmail. This was also, the lingerie for the real man was also in Taking Tea with Eros. But I did all kinds of chainmail vests, jackets, things like that. In 1995, because of the controversy and all of the information that came out about the condom cases and winning the awards, and there were people that didn't like the fact that the Metal Arts Guild had a show about sex, right? So there was a little bit of a hubbub around that. And Michael Birch, who was the curator of the Art Gallery Algoma, happened to see them and invited me to have a solo exhibition in my hometown at the Art Gallery Algoma. So having left there a decade earlier and not leaving for the best of reasons, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I felt that when I went back, I needed to protect myself. And I'm a dragon scorpion, so I made some dragon armor to wear at the gallery, right? It was a huge space, it was 1,100 square feet, and the show included not only jewelry, but clothing, chandelier, dining room table, cutlery. I had the whole place set up, and because it was such a big space, and as a jeweler, it takes a lot of material and a lot of work to fill that, I made molds so that I could take up more space. So I had a whole wall in the gallery, walls have ears, that housed all of my production wear. So that way I could sell work, but I could also do these kind of bizarre chainmail clothing and armor and condom cases and all kinds of other things in the same space. In 1999, I did some workshops with Barbara Heinrich, who at the time was the #1 jeweler selling in the US. She was in every state, in multiple galleries all over. She has a number of people that worked for her at the time, probably around 23 or 30. And she was really, really well known. So she graciously invited me to participate in this exhibition, Canadian Gold. So it was at De Novo Gallery in California, and I created 16 pieces for the show. And I had started working at OCADU the year before as a faculty and as the technician for the jewelry studio, and quit my restaurant job because all through this time I was working in a restaurant as well. And I quit my restaurant job, and then when this exhibition came up, I went back to my employer and said, please take me back. I need money so I can buy material. And so I went back to the restaurant that I'd been working at for 12 years, and I made the money, and I spent $10,000 to do work for this one exhibition. Everything had to be 18 karat gold. It was all high-end, big pieces. I didn't sell tons. Out of the 16, I think I sold 4 pieces. It didn't cover the $10,000, but it opened up a market that I didn't have access to before. People did not understand that I worked in gold. I did work in gold on consignment. I had been doing consignment work and production work all the way through, but I would do it and sell it and it would be gone. So I never actually showed the gold work. So after I started doing the gold and I showed what I had left, all of a sudden I had more commissions for gold work because people saw that I worked in gold. So sometimes you just have to dive in. And one of the things that was prevalent in all of the work was what at the time I called my ball chain, and which has since morphed into the caviar line, right? And people are always fascinated by it. Everything here is fused. Everything here is made one-off. These were molded, and these were molded. Everything else is one-off, so one-of-a-kind pieces. And people are always fascinated by the chain. So this is the creation of the caviar chain. So it's built 1 link at a time with an inch of wire. Each end is melted. It's wrapped around a 3mm rod. It's soldered, and then it's built link by link by link. And I build these little towers of tweezers. I have 50 pairs of locking tweezers, and I just stack them up so I can do it all quickly. Right? I'm pretty fast. From there, I was represented by a gallery called New, and this was their inaugural exhibition back in 2003. And again, that interest and fascination with different materials came up. So all of these pieces are brooches that come off, and when you're not wearing them, they go back in the environment. So this idea about giving back was really important. Again, the first 2 are in a private collection, but dogwood, magnets, these are little pips. They're little, you can't really tell, but they're bullet cabs, and they come off and you can wear them. Same with all the other brooches. So it was just a way of expanding and looking at the depletion of natural resources and things like that and giving back to the environment, right? I also had one of my biggest shows was the Willow Beach Arts Experience, our collective experience. This was based on an exhibition that I did for a decade called the Willow Beach Arts Festival. And it was run by a woman named Jane McCall, and it ran in Cobourg, Ontario. So people would go, they'd camp, they'd spend the weekend, and she would bring all kinds of people, and you'd have a great experience and sell. And it was just a wonderful group of people. We ate together, we swam together, we spent the whole weekend on her property. And when she passed away, her family didn't want to continue it because of the cost of the insurance to have that festival. So we did this show to honor her. So all of the work is based on the collective and based on the fact that it takes many to make anything substantial, but you're still a unique individual. So, and this piece in particular will show up again and again in my work. It's a fountain, and I'll talk about it after. So this, people are amazed when they find out what this is, especially in today's standards. This is a sheet of 16 gauge sterling silver that's 6 inches wide and about, I don't know, 10 inches high, something like that. And it's heat treated. And this is the shoreline of Lake Ontario. This is a little river, an inlet, and the diamond is actually the location of the Willow Beach Arts Festival. So, and it was just kind of to pay homage to Jane and that experience. And everybody that went there collected fossils along the way, along the beach, along the shoreline. And everywhere you looked, they had them lined up on the side of the tub, on the windowsills, everywhere. So this is a brooch that when you wear it, you take it off, you wear it, and you put it back. And the diamond comes off as well. It has a clutch back on the back with a little lever that you squeeze, you pull it off, and you can wear it. So again, my caviar chain shows up, and the idea again about natural environment, putting things back, taking things off, putting them back where they go, giving back to the environment, was there. And this started off as a one-off, and I just want to point this out to everybody. People say, oh, you do artwork, you do production work, you do this, there's this kind of divide, right? It's all production. Whether you make it once, whether you make it 100 times, it's all production. Unless somebody pays me to do an exclusive design, I make it if I sell it. This particular piece, I thought I would never sell it. I've sold it 4 times, right? Because it's a little different. And within this, every single piece in this show has one gold link representing the unique individual within the collective, right? So this is a brooch that just has the unique individual, right? I also branched off to try to do things that were not necessarily jewelry, but still jewelry adjacent, right? And jewelry related. So I did wall-mounted work where I still used the chain and deconstructed it to create the stand in the beach. And again, all with the gold link. A couple years later, OCAD hosted Currents, which was an exhibition of material art design, and an alumni reunion for the Year of Craft. And it was held in conjunction with Nuit Blanche. So the theme was exactly what you see here. Currents run deep, currents run shallow, currents run fast and slow. And my whole idea for the exhibition was I wanted jewelry, but I wanted it to be an experience. I wanted it to be about the current. So everything here has monofilament, and it's about the shadows that are created. And I'm using things like magnets and different ways of putting it together. So the pieces on the wall, this is magnetic, so it clips in, and then when you want to wear the necklace, you take it out of the wall, and it just snaps together, and you just wear it. And then when you're not wearing it, it goes back on the wall, and the lighting creates this wonderful kind of linear wave pattern. And this is the same idea, only I'm trying not to use the chain, and I'm using wire to create the movement of the current of the water, right? I also created a production line during this time as well. I had a lot of clients that were starting to suffer with arthritis and having issues with the small clasps and closures. So I did a whole line of magnetic pieces that could be easily opened and closed. I did them with both Swarovski crystal, and I did them with real pearls. And as soon as I started doing this, it opened up an opportunity for a new revenue stream. Because anyone that has natural or real pearls knows that you have to restring them every 5 to 7 years because they start to get too damaged, right? The string gets damaged. So I was doing a lot of restringing of people's pearls, and it was just an added financial gain, right? Just an opportunity. Again, more production, looking at failed castings. I was doing my own casting at the time, so if I had something that failed, I didn't discard it, I just used it as an element in something else, right? Taking that opportunity to let what happen naturally be part of the work. Cuttlefish casting in the middle, started using more gold and more stones, all kinds of different things that could be worn in multiple ways, right? So all the way through this, I'm doing production with the fish line, the ivy line, and the bristle line. I'm just not showing you that. That was the stuff that I would sell at the outdoor show and other places because it was affordable. Some of these pieces weren't so affordable. This was Between in 2009. This was an exhibition with, again at NU, with Chung Yun Kim and Gord Thompson, both technicians in our other areas of the school. So we hosted this show together, and the idea of between, however you viewed between. So for me, it was about the meeting place between man and God, right? So Ara, the constellation Ara in the sky, is the altar. And for me, it had this significance of the meeting place and between, right? So the past, the present, and the future. So you don't know what the future is yet. The past is already set and solidified, and we have this golden opportunity in the present. And it has an Arduino and lights inside, so it would project the star constellation onto your body. So from there, the whole series was based around Ara, the constellation Ara. So life, the universe, and everything, nature, and this is plexiglass that's hand carved. So the natural environment, the man-made environment, and what are we doing between? Like, how are we keeping those connections, right? Everybody, when you get married, your spouse, your partner offers you the universe. So here you have the universe wedding ring, right? This one has Ara on it, but I've done these with various different constellations for different people, right? This is one of my favorite pieces. This is the evolution of adornment. And it was based on the transformation of social value through the history of man. So man's adorned himself since the beginning of time to identify the value of tribal membership or status, and each link represents a significant moment in connection from one technology to the next, right? So it's all about the history of man and the link between these events. So it starts with a salmon bone and moose hair, because hunter-gatherers were what we valued at the beginning of social structure, right? Social society. Cuttlefish casting, the beginning of the casting movement, is the first thing people cast into. Really ancient process. Turtella, the ocean floor, the sediment that we stand on, the structure of where we are. Population growth, agrarian society, hand-carved plexiglass. The stone that you see is a bubble-cut citrine. It had only been around for about 10 years at the time, and it was a reverse cut, so cut from the back, new technology that hadn't really been used much. And then the culmination is a 16 gig USB key. And that sounds like nothing, but you have to think this is 2009. They didn't exist, right? This is a beta that I bought from Japan, from a factory, that they were not available to the public yet. It was super expensive, probably more expensive than almost anything else there except the gold. And on it, it has the record of the making of the work for the show. This went on later in 2013. I won Best in Show for Transformation, which was an exhibition that was held for the 9th annual juried exhibition of Canadian fine jewelry and metalwork from Zilberschmuck. And it was part of Metamosaic, which was the North American Goldsmith Conference held here in Toronto in 2013. So this is just another look at it. Little box catch. It's reversible, so the pattern's on both sides, the diamonds are on both sides. It's got a box catch. Very, very diverse in its fabrication. At the same time, literally at the same time, I was invited to participate in the Chungju International Craft Biennale in 2019, and I was representing Ontario. And the opening for Between was the day before we flew to Korea. So we ended up having a closing for the exhibition instead. And this is the piece that I had in Chungju, the Unity and Diversity exhibition and the Coast to Coast bracelets, just talking about the diversity of Canada, the differences in not only the areas of the country, but also the people of the country. So again, each link represents a different aspect of the country. I was lucky enough to get a grant from the Ontario Arts Council and the Craft Council to go to the exhibition, and I hosted 2 talks, one at Chungju University, one at Sangmayang University, and I did a workshop, a hands-on workshop on fusing while I was there. And again, it was just an incredible experience. I can't say enough good things about the opportunities that you have to show your work, to talk about your work, to do physical things. We're all makers. The physicality of what we do is really, really important. Yeah, it is me, even though it's like 50 pounds lighter. And again, at the same time, I was doing production work. And a lot of my production work is for the purchaser, not necessarily for the public. It's not like now where everything is about, showing everything to the world. Look at me, look at how great I am. The diamonds are set on the top intentionally. They're not projecting outward, they're projecting up. So that when you wear it, you see them, but no one else does. I often set stones in the back of my work. I put precious elements in the back of the work. I put little Easter eggs in the back of my work so that they are for the owner and the purchaser, not for the public. They are in my way of respecting the people that buy my work. So, full circle. I came back to school in 2006 to OCADU to finish my undergrad after getting kicked out in 1989. So I had to take all of the MAD courses because I taught them, but they didn't count them because they only did prior learning assessment for written work. So from 2006 to 2010, I was a student sitting in art classes with the students. And I was lucky enough to take a biomimicry course, which I loved because it was looking at biology and how natural things influence design and how the natural world does things in a way that are less harmful, that don't use chemicals. It's not heat, beat, and treat. It's environmental, and it's a protective way of working, and it's something that's been done for centuries, and we have now abused the environment so bad that we're having issues, right? So through that biomimicry course, I am an avid gardener, for anyone that knows me, and I'm very concerned about agriculture and water use and sustainable water use, because without water we're nothing, right? My fascination with water goes beyond just the physical and beyond the fish motif and the work that I do, but it's also about the longevity of our species, right? So I created this passive irrigation system, which later became known as the PISS project, right? And the PISS project kind of goes back to a way of getting safe drinking water for people that were in desertified areas. You would take a piece of plastic, you would dig a little hole in the sand, you would pee in it, you would put the plastic over top with a cup in the bottom and throw a pebble in it, and the condensation would be pure water that came off of it, and it would run down the plastic and drip into the cup. So if you were ever in a desert and you didn't have any water, you could get water, right? So that was just part of it. But I looked at all kinds of different plants and organisms in nature and how they survive with no water, and I created this PISS project, which has 3 patents. So from the patents, I was asked to participate in the Strategic Foresight and Innovation program, the master's program. So again, I didn't finish my undergrad, and I went from undergrad, or no undergrad, to a master's program. So after 13 years of higher education. So as a result, in that process, I was looking at future thinking work. I was looking at ways of, again, looking at water, and not just water, but everything. So this work in particular is from the World Future Conference in 2012, and it's a beta launch exhibition looking at the future series, looking at the future of work, the future of environment, the future of human, right? So this was a little nanobot that I created, and because of my mold making experience and everything else, I made the blister packs. The pills are all handmade. The blister pack is handmade, the labeling is handmade, the microscope is handmade, and the little nanobot, which goes into your system and does genetic repair, right? This is the futuristic thinking, right? So this little nanobot is a piece of silver hydraulic press form. It has a little propeller that moves back here, and a hypodermic that injects you with whatever that change needs to be. So in 2015, I finished my master's, which no one will ever see. unless you dig it up in the library. It's about 300 pages long, and it's so dry, it might as well be in a desert. But it is How Might the Evolution of Urban Agriculture Advance Sustainable Agriculture in the Future? Foresight study looking at food security through the lens of urban rooftop agriculture and sustainable water management, which is the longest title in the world. And I would never do that now. But the article covered everything from how do we survive, how do we grow things with less water, with more sustainable water, and all of that stuff. So just keep in mind, during all this, I was working 60% as technician and 50% as faculty in running my practice. So Metamosaic was 2013. This is while I was still in school. I didn't graduate until 2015. And this is a piece that harkens back to the Willow Beach show. But they were looking for pieces that they could show in an environment, on a stage, for part of the conference. So luckily, I had something that had pearls, and it got accepted into the show. And again, it was part of the Metamosaic 2013 SNAG conference here in Toronto. And for that conference, I did a number of things. I did, I think, 4 different events. I organized or co-organized a national student exhibition of jewelry work. It was quite broad. And I've done a number of exhibitions over the years, some with Dory, some with other people, but we've done, I think, 7 national student exhibitions, hosted them, created things, and put them together so that students had opportunity to show their work. So we did 7 between 2002 and 2017. Through all of the stuff that I do and the connections that I have and the people that I know, I also do some consulting. I've consulted for businesses, I've consulted for the AGO, the Gardener, OCAD, like different companies for things about installation and problem solving. And in 2013, I was hired as a consultant by the AGO for the St. Sebastian project. This was the largest piece of ivory that had been purchased in a decade. It was $4.75 million, and it had been sitting in a drawer for about 5 years because they could not figure out how to mount it. So they hired me to consult. I consulted with them, and they had to anchor it. There's a bezel set here that keeps it from shifting, because without it, the whole thing tends to swing and pivot all the time because of the way that it's balanced. So they couldn't figure it out. So I finally worked out a design, we talked about it, but they couldn't find anyone that could make it. So they hired me to make it. So it's in the gallery now and has been. My husband said, don't show that picture. It doesn't show the work that you did. That's the whole purpose. The purpose of it was that it was supposed to be invisible. So when I worked on this, I had to have a mold made of the ivory because I couldn't work directly on the ivory. If I scratched it, it's worth $4.75 million. If I scratched it, I wouldn't have a house, I wouldn't have anything. So again, I had a legal contract written up saying that I would never be in the room with it by myself, and I would never handle it myself. So they had a curator that always handled it, moved it, and did everything. I did do work on it, I did hold it, and I did set up things to do a dental alginate cast so that I could make a model of it so that I wouldn't have to handle it. But it was just a lot of legal stuff. But it was extremely lucrative. And I've done display work for the Gardener, I've done display work for the Toronto Star, I've done prop building for different organizations, for theater companies, for things like that, as a result of these kinds of problem-solving opportunities, right? This was the 50th anniversary of the Society of North American Goldsmiths. Again, a little thinner. So this was in Chicago, held in Chicago, and it was a runway show. Again, they wanted work that could be seen from a distance, from the stands, as people went on the runway. So my contribution, and it was juried from all of North America, and I ended up with 2 pieces in the show. They're using industrial foam and spray paint. This has 50 links, representing one link for every year of snag, and it's meant to be dragged behind the wearer. So it's about the history of snag, right? So there's this whole story that goes with it, which is part of it. You have to be able to sell your work. You have to be able to have the conversation and say, this is what this represents, this is why you need to have it, right? And have it all make sense. So this was one of the pieces. The other piece, which is Golden Phylogenesis, this piece was about the ever-changing evolution of an organism or an organization to stay relevant and stay alive. So it's one long piece, but it can be worn in various different ways depending on the environment, right? So you can have it tighter, you can have it looser, however you need to. So it's about the evolution. So I showed them 5 different representations or ways to wear it to represent the 5 century or 5 decades of snag. We're almost done. It's taking me a little longer than I thought it would. This was my most recent work, or big show anyway. Flow was a solo exhibition in Jay Ju's gallery. Jay Ju was a graduate. He started the studio in 2013. It was a gallery space and studio, and I was lucky enough to be one of his inaugural exhibitions. And this was the piece, again, it kind of harkens back to Willow Beach, but it was really important for me because Echo from the Beach, which is the name of this, provides a visual representation of my emotional connection to the sound of water as it rushes over pebbles at the shore of Willow Beach. It's meant to be a sensory experience, including the sound of the water and the concept combining the shore and the perfect pebble, looking for the perfect pebble. So the piece is removable, the pin, but when you walked into the gallery, the first thing you heard was water running. So you already had a preconceived idea that it was about water. This is a group of students. I gave talks every Saturday. The show ran for a month, and I gave talks every Saturday for anyone that came to the gallery. This is me setting it up. I did 70 pieces in 3 months. And the show was set up as kind of retrospective. The first part of the gallery was a really confined, tight space. So it had Willow Beach and some of the work from Currents. And this beach in particular is about 300 hours. I did not sleep a lot for 3 months. And it's about 300 hours. It's all porcelain. The shells range from about, I don't know, a centimeter and a half to about 5 centimeters. And they're all molded, just hand pressing into a mold. I did them every morning. I spent 3 hours or 4 hours making them so that they could dry enough that I could get them out and do them again the next day. And then they were fired. The beach is 10 feet long and a foot wide. And this is the way it looked in the gallery, the back space. So even the display was set up in a wave. So it came down and up and down and up because everything had to relate to water. The neck pieces are not round because our human neck is not round. If you do a slice of your neck, not that you're going to do that, but if you look at it, it's not a round surface. It has this kind of almost heart shape. So this is the average size of a woman's neck. And then all the pieces were mounted on the wall. This is all new work that was made specifically for the show, minus a couple of pieces on the far end. And the pieces themselves, some of them are quite elaborate. This is Aliciana and Jay Ju in the gallery space. And I just want to point out the mannequin, which you'll see come up over and over and over again. The mannequin is something that, again, I made. I couldn't afford them. They were made for my show in 1995 at the Art Gal Algoma. And again, they allowed me to put mannequins on the wall to spread out the jewelry to make it more substantial in a big space. And when I was getting ready for the show, The mold is a 5-piece mold, so there are seam lines that go around the face. There's a separate section here. There's a seam that goes along the breasts and down so that you can get the volume, right? And I was still cleaning them up when I took all the work to install at the gallery. So my father at the time helped me clean up these mannequins. So, and he had a hoot because the mold lines went down through here, so he would be sanding them with sandpaper, right? And he was just having a hoot. And unfortunately, he passed away shortly thereafter. So every time I have a show, a mannequin's always in the show because it kind of represents my father and his support of me. This is a harken back to those pieces from 2009. This is the Willow Beach. This is not a piece of ivory, or not a piece of coral. This is a casting that is done in porcelain, so that I'm not taking from the environment. I'm actually using a mold, using dental alginate, and then recreating it in a material that I can use. I now do them in eggshell as well. But again, it's the same thing. Dirty water representing what we're doing to the environment. So these are some of the pieces from that show. These were both sold recently, 2023, at the Craft Council of BC Earring Show. Not cheap, they're 14 karat gold. Everybody told me you can't fuse gold onto silver, it doesn't work. But it does if you figure out the math. So it's not true 14, it's somewhere between 14 and 15 in order to get the melting point to be the same as the silver so that you can bond it together. If you just use straight 14, it just puddles before it bonds to the silver. And then the natural pearls, or not natural pearls, but the real pearls. This is kind of a lineup of how things were set up at the gallery. The first case that you saw, or the first wall piece above the beach, the first side was all pebbles from the beach near my house. So earrings, bracelet, all kinds of things. The next one was sterling shells using the same molds as the porcelain beach. And this particular bracelet is over a pound of sterling. So you have to be strong to wear it. The next section was the caviar line, and we did them in sterling, high polished sterling patinated, and then I also do them with 18 karat or all 18 karat. This was a private commission from that show. So again, having exhibitions and things like that, you get more residual money after the show. It's not just what you sell at the show. You get contacts. Keep your contacts. Make sure that you reach out to them, invite them to exhibitions and things like that. This is the Ocean Spiral bracelet. This is, again, each piece is fused, melted on the ends. It's a bunch of 5 pieces of wire that are wrapped with copper. The ends are melted together. It's twisted, then it's annealed, and then it's untwisted. So it's a lot of different steps along the way.
I just wanted to share that your students have been doing that as well. So I think you can appreciate
It's like,
the effort and the
yeah,
craftsmanship.
I do a whole line of this. The bracelet, I do a multiple fanned out necklace, I do a single drop, I do the earrings, and it's a really popular line because it's glitzy and it has this connection to ruffle, right? When you wear it, it's quite beautiful. I have my lovely model. So it makes a big difference when you see them on. This is more of the work from the show, always in the pink. I used to be lucky enough to have a pearl broker here in town, Crown Pearls, and she would let me go in and just basically hang out for the afternoon and sift through bin after bin after bin, because I didn't want the perfect, ordinary, or normal thing. I wanted the weird stuff. So I would just go through and find it, and unfortunately she's closed, but I always loved these weird pearls. And And the opal always comes forward. I use it all the time. These are pieces that were on the end wall of the gallery. I had a series of brooches. Most of them are sold now. But the lake bottom cast, which is a cuttlefish casting that represents the way that you see the sand under the water. Deep water sidewalk. I live close to the Leslie Spit, and if you look down into the water at the Leslie Spit, all you see is the refuse of the city, the concrete that's been dumped in. And unfortunately, some of that concrete has a lot of lime in it, so it causes environmental impact to certain spaces and certain plants and organisms. So I was looking at the dead fish, the diamond, and embedding it in the concrete, because that's what we're doing to the environment, right? The sandbox is kind of where I play with my friends, and there's me, right? This is about almost a centimeter deep, and it's just a series of these, so you can shake it up and it moves around a little bit. And then looking for goldfish, which is again that gold fused to silver. These pieces, I really wanted to, again, have gold in the show. And I had a couple of other pieces that sold. And I've sold the earrings twice. But this piece in particular, this one took me almost 20 years to make. Because I was making it for the 1999 show in California, but couldn't afford to buy the stones, to set the stones. The stones in here, the stones alone cost me $2,400. So that's not including the gold, it's not including the labor or anything else, it's just the material cost. And that's not included, that's just the stones. But luckily, they're custom cut as well to fit, and Byrex did a great job for me. But it's meant to be a set, right? This is an homage to Chung-Yim Kim, a good friend and a colleague of ours. This was juried into the Metal Aid's New Vernacular Canadian Jewelry Conversation for New York City's 2019 Jewelry Week in New York City. And it was also originally designed and made for an exhibition called Lines, Shapes, and Objects from the Fusion Art Contemporary competition. And so one of the reasons I'm mentioning that is just because you're a jeweler doesn't mean that you can't apply for other calls for entry. As long as the ideas, the concepts, what's behind your work fits within that, apply. Especially if it doesn't cost anything. If they say no, they say no. That's the worst thing that can happen. And you have to get comfortable with that. You have to get comfortable with rejection and know that it's not you, it's the fact that your work maybe doesn't fit with the rest of the call for entry or the rest of the work that they have. Not that your work's not good, it just maybe doesn't fit with the rest of the curated work. So you just have to kind of accept that and just keep moving forward. This is just something that I'm really passionate about these days, especially as gold and silver become more and more expensive. I'm looking at alternative materials and alternative ways of making jewelry. So I'm using everything from concrete, plexi, plastic, broken toothpicks, broken rolling pin, wasp nest, sawdust with just epoxy resin from the dollar store. But it's all, you can use it all. You can make use of things that are going in the garbage. I'm also producing production line work constantly, whether it's the fish line, the ivy line, the squiggle line, something completely unique. I do custom work as well, but the custom work I don't usually photograph because for those pieces, most of the people that are hiring me to do them now are hiring me for exclusivity. They don't want me to do production. They don't want someone else to have the same engagement ring or the same whatever. And again, more alternative material. Gold and makemagane, gold and silver, wood, sterling, and rivets, and concrete. This is some of the production work. I didn't focus a lot on production work because I wanted just to show you the rest of it, but I was doing production work all the way through The big pieces aren't where you make your money, it's where you make your name. You make your money on the $175, $150, $120 earrings. That's where you make your money, that's where you make your living. Either that or you teach, or you work somewhere else, you work at another job, and you do this so that you can just do the big work that you want. But you have to find a way that you can do both. These are my most recent pieces. This was an invitational exhibition at Harbourfront. 36 brooches, eggshell, sterling, gold, and diamond. It's quite dimensional. It's got a little bit of a lift, which took me some time to figure out. It's supposed to be kind of like a drop, so when you look at it from the side, it's not flat. It comes down from a height and then curls this way, which is supposed to mimic that shape in the center. And because I'm who I am, I did 3 pieces for Melanie. She asked me for 1, but I wanted to give her 3 options so that she could find something that fit within the context of the rest of the work of the show. And this was my favorite out of them all, but she didn't choose it. And that's it. 50 years. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about anything, yes?
I have around like 6 questions.
Yeah.
So, since you've mentioned that you work with silver for both one-off pieces and custom pieces and production pieces as well, and the price of silver is even higher now, do you think that, and would you say that it's possible to work with silver in a piece and still call that piece a premium or a high jewelry?
Yeah, I do. I personally do. I don't think it's a material anymore. Starting back in the 70s and 80s, the new jewelry movement, and a lot of contemporary jewelry does not include precious metals because they're just too expensive.
Yeah.
So it depends on where you're selling it. If you're trying to sell it through a boutique or a jewelry store, they may not see the value of a piece of cardboard or a piece of whatever, like something other than gold, diamonds, silver, precious metal, right? But there are other opportunities out there, and some of them you have to make yourself, unfortunately. That's the biggest thing. And you have this amazing community at OCAD that you guys can collectively do things together. Take advantage of every opportunity you can. Like I said earlier, you're never going to be able to do this on your own. You have to do it with other people, whether it's other people to share studio space with. I mean, when I closed my studio in the Wrigley's building, I had to keep working. So I moved my bed that was in my 1-bedroom apartment into my living room, and I converted my bedroom into my studio so that I could work in my apartment. Even though it was illegal, and I'm not suggesting that anyone do that, I had my gas and my oxygen in my apartment, and my landlord would come in quite often to check on things or whatever, and I would just dismantle everything and put it in my closet under my dirty laundry. And if they wanted to dig through my laundry to find my torch, then by all means, go for it. But I worked for 3 years in my apartment in order to make work. Yeah.
And how were you able to expand your work in connection to other sides of the industry that were not exactly jewelry related? The parts that you said you worked on exhibitions and
Part of that is networking. Part of it is just going and being part of the community. And when people know that you're a problem solver, and because I did a lot of installation work for OCAD, I did gallery installation work for other people. I did a number of exhibitions for painters where I was building installation mounts for unusual work. Like part of the exchange that I did with Alison Judd, in exchange for those photographs that I took of her, I installed her thesis exhibition at a gallery, and she was doing these massive paintings on Mylar, and she couldn't figure out how to mount them. So we created a mounting structure which was just boards really, really clean. We made them in the metal or in the wood shop so that they were super, super clean, milled down, perfectly flat, sunk magnets into them. And so we had one mounted to the wall with screws, and then the front plate had magnets, and the Mylar went between, and it just snapped and held it up without having to pierce or put holes or put anything in the painting itself. But no one had thought of that at the time. But because I was already doing that with my jewelry, I was using a lot of magnets back then, it was a no-brainer for me. And so it was just because she needed something, I needed something, we worked out an arrangement, and we problem solved together. And that's what you have to do. Yeah. And from that, it just opened things up.
Yeah. And how did you make connections with galleries and start to show your pieces there? And how impactful would you say those projects were in your career?
Hugely impactful. And outdoor show, outdoor show, outdoor show. For me, there weren't a lot of opportunities. I mean, yes, I had connections with the gallery scene in Sault Ste. Marie because I was already selling paintings through the Paul Gallery and the Art Gallery Algoma, but they wanted paintings. They didn't want jewelry or sculpture or art-related work. They wanted my paintings. So in order to get out of that or to find galleries, I didn't actually search very far. I was blessed and really lucky because I won a couple of awards early on, and because I did the outdoor show so many years, back then buyers, they couldn't go and look at your Instagram. They couldn't look at, you know, your website because none of that existed. So they would come specifically to the outdoor show to search out new talent. And so I got most of my galleries, most of my high-end clients came from the outdoor show. And then it just built over time.
So would you say you were able to find more high-end clients from the outdoor show?
Yeah, definitely. They come, they're educated, they're there to spend money.
They expect that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And when you were making the displays, like if you want to make our own displays, what are the materials that you suggest? Or if you want to make our own packaging, what are the materials that you suggest? Because I saw that you had a variety of display design.
Yeah. It totally depends on where it is or what it's for. When I did work for people like the Gardner, I did work again for Lena Alinka. She was a studio mate back when we were in Beyond the Front, and she went on to do all kinds of residencies and large-scale ceramic sculpture exploration kind of work. And when she needed someone to install an exhibition of her work at the Gardner, she came to me because she knew how I think, right? And because we had a connection through Beyond the Front, and I knew her work and I know ceramic work, she hired me because I understood the principles of the material she was working in, and I could problem solve. So I ended up working with an industrial fabricator, and we made these steel plinths that were folded on a bending brake that were like they were super heavy. And so I had to have them done at a factory in the West End in order to hold the weight. But it was designed in a way that they were modular, they fit together, they supported the weight of her work, and they looked really, really clean in the gallery. But it was because of the connection from earlier that it worked. Yeah.
The display that you had in the Jenkins gallery,
Yeah.
the neck and pieces on the wall, what was the material?
That was just MDF painted, and on the back it had a French cleat. A French cleat is when you have a board, say it's whatever thickness it is, doesn't matter. You cut it on a 45-degree angle. So on the wall, you have the angle going out this way, and on your piece, you have it going the other way. And when you put it on the wall, it locks together and holds it in place. They're super stable, they're light, they're durable. So, and it totally depends on what it is, where it is, and how you're going to set it up.
So you just cut the neck part on the.
That's just cut out with a skill saw, and then sanded. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have
Yeah.
one last question.
Okay.
Since you've worked with both silver and gold, what would you say the markup for pricing silver pieces are and for gold pieces?
Gold, you can always get more for it.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. It's the same thing with, one of the pieces that I showed you was sterling silver with plexiglass in the middle and a diamond. It's like, ooh, a diamond. So the price, people already automatically expect to spend more for a diamond, even though it was only a $20 diamond. The mental perception is that there's value there. It's the same thing if you put a couple of gold balls or a little bit of gold wire on something, and you can say, oh, it's 18 karat yellow gold. And my gold is different than most gold. My gold is all alloyed by me. So it's not Italian yellow, which is the most common yellow. It's 12.5% for 18 karat. It's 12.5% fine silver and 12.5% copper. I put less copper and more silver. So my yellow is brighter than that brassy Italian yellow. And I did that intentionally so that my gold would not look like anyone else's gold, and it would separate me from other people working in gold. So if you wanted something for commission work, if you want Italian yellow, I did it in Italian yellow. If you had other jewelry, you wanted it all to match. But if it was my work, I always used kind of a different alloy so that it separated my work from other people's work. Even on my production work where I didn't do fusing, my logo is the fused fish. So even when I did chain work or any of the big stuff, I always had a little section or a tag that had a fused component, whether it was on a locket clasp or whatever, it had a fused component, so people would know that that was my work. Yeah, you're welcome.
Robert, this has been so nice to see your work. Really beautiful breadth, and you can sort of see there are some through lines here. I think one of the things that I notice and recognize most is your connection with the collective and like working with others. And so I guess maybe something even for like students to think about is strategic partnerships. So it sounds like sort of in the beginning, the partnership with the galleryist, the lady who was like 15 years older than you, it sounded like that one maybe wasn't the right fit. Whereas it sounds like afterwards you were able to recognize who was better suited for you. Can you walk us through maybe like how you
It's so true. I mean, that first experience I had really kind of set the tone for me, and it taught me that I needed to work with people that had the same values as I did, that looked at things in a similar way, not necessarily the same way, but that looked at things in a way of reciprocity and support and balance, rather than, oh, I want to make a quick buck, how can we do this? I don't care if it rapes the environment, I don't care if it's, and to be honest, a lot of this is from trial and error. I did have a jewelry rep early on in my career that I did the mode show, I did the wedding show, I did a bunch of things with her, and then all of a sudden I was getting orders for things that I didn't have for the same pricing. It's like, well, I'm not doing a snake chain when I have a small cable and you're offering it for the same price when a snake chain is 4 times the cost of a regular chain. And then it got to the point where they wanted to have all of my molds to ship them offshore so that they would do all the fabrication offshore and I would just put them together. And that's when I walked away, because it was like, no, that's not what I'm doing. So we no longer, we didn't have an alignment. And at first, I thought that was the only way to get ahead, was to have a rep, because everyone that was doing all of these bigger shows had a representative either in the art world or in the commercial world where they were selling through places like the Mode Show. And I was like, well, no, that's not what I want. So it was kind of that kind of led me to this idea of making sure that I had alignment with the way people operated, the way that they worked, who they were as a human being, more so than profit, right? Because that's what I found. A lot of those early days, people that wanted my work. Another prime example is Oneida, the cutlery factory, approached me at the outdoor show and wanted my cutlery, and they wanted to produce the cutlery at Oneida. But the contract that they gave me was exclusive. They were like, you can do this, but that means you have to pull all the work that you have at your galleries. Anything that you have the ivy pattern on, you cannot sell because we're buying the ivy pattern, right? And I was like, well, what are you giving me? And when I worked it out, it wasn't enough. Like, they just wanted, they thought I was young, they thought they could take advantage, and they were looking for the profit in it, not in a partnership. They just wanted to buy it and then bye-bye, you're gone, right? And I decided that whether it was the right or wrong decision, I wasn't really willing to give up the potential money I had from the 30 or 40 or 50 pairs of earrings and bracelets and other things that I had using that pattern already, and my relationship with people that supported me. I wasn't willing to give it up, right? Because there was this misalignment in what they wanted and what I wanted. Yeah, it's really, really important. If you don't believe in the people that you're working with, if you don't have the same philosophy, the same ideas, the same goals, don't go into a long-term partnership with them. If it's a short-term thing and you're trying to see if something's going to work, by all means, explore, find out things, but don't commit a lot of money. When I started the gallery, I committed a lot of money. I mean, and I lost my shirt to the point where I lived in a car garage, right? Because I was naive and I thought that this person was looking out for my best interest, that she was older than me, she had plans, she, whatever, and it just worked out that she was just bored and looking for something to do, and then went on to the gym world and decided to do something in the gym realm instead of the studio realm. And I was left holding this debt. Yeah, good question.
Like you mentioned, you were kicked out when you were in undergrad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what made you decide just go to grad school? Did you like work as a jeweler before, or like what did you make?
I was working as a jeweler all the way through. In fact, even when I had my studio in Don Mills, in the ceramic studio, I was still doing some jewelry work, and I was actually doing ceramic jewelry with sterling silver wires and sterling silver connections and things like that, and selling them on Queen Street to make money. And then I had the opportunity to go to Harbourfront. I applied with ceramic jewelry, to be honest. Just those few pieces that I showed you from my very minimal education here at OCAD in jewelry. And then with all the work that I was doing with ceramics and ceramic jewelry, they accepted me into Harbourfront. The only condition when I signed my contract was that I couldn't use the ceramic studio there. Because they hired me or gave me a position in the jewelry studio, and they didn't want me crossing over and spending all my time in. And I lived there, I lived in the studio at Harbourfront. We had 24-hour access. I used to have a Magnum wine bottle full of coffee in my bench, and I would work 24/7. I would go in after work when I worked in the restaurant business. I would go in after work because I couldn't sleep, I was wired, so I'd go and work for 4 hours. And back then I didn't need a lot of sleep, so it was good. I went back to do my master's partly because I was in a position where I was 60% technician, 50% faculty from 1998 to 2016. At 2016, I had an opportunity to move into tenure track, and part of the problem was before that, I had been told without a master's, I couldn't move up. I would stay as a sessional faculty or as a continuing faculty. I would never move up. So I decided early on to go back to school to get my master's so that if I did want to go further with education, I could do that, and that's why I did it. It was purely, well, I shouldn't say that. It was partly that and partly because the Strategic Force and Innovation Program gave me some credibility for the PIS project. I would go into these meetings, went into funding meetings where people were going to give me space to do research and testing to see whether or not it was a viable product or a viable idea, and everyone was a go until they found out I was a jeweler, right? I wasn't an industrial designer, I wasn't working in that realm. So they kind of were like, okay, maybe not. So by doing the strategic forcing innovation, I thought it would give me some credibility. And it did to a certain extent, but I just got busy with other things. Any last questions? Thank you all. Thank you for coming. We will continue on with these. Thank you, Nicole. We'll